The New York Giants and Washington Commanders battle to a 20-20 tie in what was an ugly game for the Giants. Former NFL scout David Turner and I break it all down for you coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times the amount of your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Hello, New York Giant fans. Welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. Paricia Traina here with you with former NFL scout David Turner, and we're going to break down what feels like a loss. It's technically not a loss. It's a 20-20 tie between the Giants and Washington Commanders, but David, it feels like a loss because the Giants had this one, and they just, I don't know what happened to the offense in the second half, but they let it get out of their hands.
Yeah, the end of the game really was tragedy because, you know, they started off really well. They started off hot, and then next thing you know, boom, it just seemed like they couldn't get anything going late in the game. And it was just, I don't know. We'll get into it. I'm sure we'll get into the specifics. But for me, you know, I really thought that when they hit that first deep ball to Slayton, that took a lot of the nerves off the offense almost. Up to that point, they weren't doing too well. And then they hit that deep shot, and Slayton opened up that offense. And then all of a sudden, here we go. We started having momentum there for a while. Then the fourth quarter happened, and that's where I think we just lost a lot of it. Until overtime, we had some momentum too, but I think they got cutesy.
I was just going to ask you what you thought about the coaching. There were a couple of sequences there where suddenly, you know, I go back to the beginning of the year when they were on that win streak, and you saw Riverboat Brian, you know, Riverboat Dable, Riverboat Kafka, and it just seemed like they crawled back into a shell. I don't know if that's because of the injuries or just because they're just not trusting Daniel Jones, or what's going on there. What are you seeing when you look at that sequence? And of course, I'm talking about at the end of the first half. And then, you know, later on when they decided to punt, when they had like 4th and 3 and they were in Commander territory. I mean,
I thought they absolutely botched the end of the first half, and they botched the end of the game. Those two sequences or calls were, to me, like, what's going on here? Because, you know, they were making a nice little drive. I know they were using the run game to get down there and everything. But in that situation, like, take a shot to Bellinger or take a shot to, you know, Slayton or somebody in the end zone. Don't run Daniel Jones when you're out of timeouts and then go clock it. Or if you're going to do that, run up to the line, clock it, save the timeout, and then you can do whatever you want. Like, that's fine. Like, you got your timeout and you got 12 or 15 seconds. Hey, man, playbook's open. Do what you want. You know what I mean? But when they ran up or they called the timeout and they only had 12 seconds to go, I believe it was in the first half before the play, and then they ran that zone read. I'm like, what? Like, you don't have any timeouts. Why are you running a zone read? Like, and then Daniel pulls it and he's starting to run. I'm like, we're not at the 2. We're not at the 5. We're out there a little bit. Like, what's going on? Like, I really thought they were going to take a shot. And, you know, if it wasn't there, Daniel throw it away and take the field goal. Like, and they did. They took the field goal, and that was, you know, honestly, they went to halftime tied up, right? So that was okay. I was fine with that. I mean, the way they were doing it, I get it. But just that sequence was really iffy to me on understanding what was going on there with the play calling. And then at the end of the game, they were doing fine. They were rolling, and And then they got cutesy with some kind of like double cross in the backfield. Running backs run into each other. And then Daniel has to try to pick up some yards, and then Graham came up short with the kick. It was just this, again, weird sequence and too cutesy. It's like, stick to what you're good at, what's been working. Again, you got Bellinger back, and he had a decent game. Slayton was having a decent game. I mean, up to that point, Daniel, at one point, Daniel's only incompletion was the spike. Yeah, so it's like, what the my language, what the heck is going on here? Because at the end of the day, it's like you got Daniel. He was playing a really good game. I think he ended up 25 for 31 for 200 even yards. But Slayton had 90 yards, and Hodgins had 44 or something like that on 5 catches, and he had 6 targets. I mean, the receivers, I've been killing the receivers with dropping the passes. And today, look at this. Slayton was 6 of 8. Hodgins was 5 of 6. Bellinger 5 of 5. Barkley 5 of 5. James even 3 of 3. And then Breida got 1 pass, and he was 1 for 1. I mean, these guys only dropped or let go 3 passes. You know what I mean? So, dang. I mean, they were playing. Those guys were playing. So, I don't know why they didn't trust Daniel a little bit more with his arm at that moment, at both the end of the half and at the end of the game, just to be smart with he was making smart decisions. He wasn't putting the ball into traffic today. It was a really solid game for Daniel. I don't know why those 2 instances, which were key moments in the game, they didn't trust him to pull the trigger.
Have they kind of regressed a little bit when it comes to the trust of Daniel? Because in the beginning of the year, it looked like they were more trusting. And it just seems like lately they really tightened the reins on him a little bit. Do you see that, or is it just something changed? Or
I'll be honest, I think it's not a call on Daniel, it's a call on the receivers.
Yeah.
Because the last few games, I've been crushing the receivers about drops and not, and then Daniel's trying to fit balls into tight windows because he's trying to make a play happen, I don't think it's a call on Daniel. I think, honest to God, I think it's more the receivers. I made a comment in social media this week. Someone was kind of going back and forth with me, and I was just like, the Giants receiver room is a mass unit. So they're running out of bodies. It's hard. So I think in those instances, it's like, well, they're probably going to double Slayton, and so let's just try to run the ball or something instead of, put Daniel in a situation where he might try to make a play and throw a pick. I don't think that's a call that they didn't trust Daniel. I mean, again, up to that point in the first half, the only incompletion was the spike. I think it's more of they don't feel they have that go-to receiver that they can just, they don't have like when I was in the league, we had a Randy Moss, we had a Tim Brown, we had we had Chris Chambers, different teams I was on, we had those guys. And then we said, okay, we're going to go to this guy on 3rd down or in the red zone. This is what we're going to do. So I just don't think they feel they have that player right now.
Explain this one to me, because I'm still trying to figure it out. Saquon Barkley finished 18 of 63 yards. Okay, 3.5 average. He ran the ball, I think, 7 times for 3 yards in the second half. What gives? And that, I'm including overtime. Why the shift in strategy? I mean, I know that the Commanders, they dominated the time of possession, 41-11 to 28-49, but why not go for more balance there, especially if the game was so tight?
In my opinion, when they abandon the run game is when they abandon their identity, and that. And so for me, Breida didn't even get a touch. Brightwell didn't even get a touch, So it's like their commitment to the run game is a duo, and part of the duo is your quarterback. Now, weeks past, again, I said that they didn't call runs for Daniel when they should have because they weren't accounting for him, right? This week, I thought they called Well, I think Daniel scrambled on 6 of his runs or 7 of his runs. But he picked up 5 or 6 first downs with his legs. So, again, he's making smart decisions. It's like, I'm going to run. I see it. Let me go get it. And then I'm not going to throw the ball into, poor coverage. I get it. But not having touches for Breida and the other back in the game, to me, is a mistake. And like you said, Barkley should be touching the ball running the ball 25 times a game. Breida should probably get 7 touches and maybe Brightwell 2 or 3. That's really what their identity is, and that's where they should be just churning and burning and putting it in their hands and kind of, I'll call it, say, beating them into submission, especially with the offensive line not being stellar at pass blocking right now. I would stay downhill. I think they might have got a little gun shy with that because last game, Barkley couldn't run. They couldn't get the running game going. But you can't abandon your identity here. You really can't.
And they did. They absolutely did. All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the defense, which I thought had a little bit better of a day, but, there were still some things. We'll talk about that coming right up. This episode of the LockedOn Giants podcast is brought to you by Total Wine. This holiday season, find what you love at Total Wine and more. With so many great bottles to choose from, it's easy to find a new favorite single barrel bourbon or the perfect gifts for everyone on your list with some help from a friendly guide. And with all the confidence of knowing that you found something special for the lowest price possible. Find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine and More. Curbside pickup and delivery is available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Please drink responsibly and be 21 to drink. This episode of the LockedOn Giants podcast is brought to you by Simply Safe. Home burglaries and intruder breaches are unfortunately on the rise, especially as we get closer to the holiday season. Don't let the bad guys win. Build up your best defense with a customized system from Simply Safe. Used and trusted by thousands of people, Simply Safe is cutting-edge technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. Simply Safe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and will even dispatch the appropriate first responders to your residence, even if you're not home. Don't risk your family's safety. Put Simply Safe 24/7 professional monitoring and advanced response technology to work for you today. Visit simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL to customize your system at a special listener discount of 20%, plus get your first month of interactive monitoring for free. That's simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL for your customized 20% discounted security system and free month of interactive monitoring. All right, everybody, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. You got Paricia Traina here with David Turner, former NFL scout, and we're trying to make sense of this Giants 2020 tie with the Washington Commanders, and didn't really hurt the Giants in terms of the standings, but you know what? Seattle won today. That bottom of the NFC playoff picture is starting to get a little crowded, and the Giants got the Eagles next week. We'll talk about this a little bit more coming up, but the Eagles, they've got Washington again. They got to come up with another couple of wins, I think, for me to feel comfortable, and I think for a lot of people to feel comfortable of them getting in. But I want to talk about the defense right now because I don't know about you, David, but I thought the pass rush got a jolt with the return of Azeez Ojulari. And 5 different guys had sacks in this one. Lawrence had one, Jihad Ward, Thibodeau had one, Justin Ellis, Ojulari, and a couple of them, I think Ward's and Ojulari's were strip sacks. So I thought the pass rush, and I think I wrote this, I said this was the most number of sacks they've had since they had, I want to say 6 going back to week 4 against Chicago.
How about them young bucks?
Yeah.
Here we go. Line them up and let them rip, baby. They coming all day, every day. Let's have it all night long.
You were waiting for this, weren't you?
Oh, you know me. I've been waiting for Ojulari and Thibodeau and Williams and Lawrence all to be on the field at the same time. It's like a party.
Except they lost Williams to the neck thing, but he was on there for a little while. But anyway.
He was on there for a little while. So, for me, I'm excited. Like I said, this is what we've been waiting for. Coming out of training camp, going into training camp, this is what we wanted to see, was these young guys working together and causing havoc in the backfield and getting them to, get quarterbacks off their spots, right? And that we saw that today. I mean, Heineke, I've been around him. He was in Carolina with us. I know him. Great young kid. Positive attitude, just a competitive individual, right? But he's not the top tier quarterback that we're going to see in the next week. He's not going to be a top tier quarterback and playoff quarterback that we're going to see. Like, will the Commanders make it to the playoffs? Maybe, probably not, but maybe. They have a decent going right now. The team believes in Heineke, which is key for them, right? But for our pass rush today, we saw them rushing at different levels. We saw them coming in schemes and just beating them on straight rushes. We saw a lot of great progress. And that's what we were waiting to see all year. Was this team healthy enough to play like that? So, for me, I think Ojulari and Thibodeau are going to be in with, oh my gosh, just going to coming off the edges. They're going to be monsters. And you saw the one where Thibodeau just paused for a second. Otherwise, he probably would have got another sack. But that's him thinking. Like I told you a couple weeks ago, he's still thinking out there. He has to just go. I mean, but he's a rookie, so we get it. Like I get it. It's just like, oh man. And I know Wink was too. Wink's like, man, go get him. But it's like a Jason Taylor told me my first year in the season. I asked him how he rushed to the quarterback and, when he thinks about the run, he's all, I rush the quarterback until I run into the running back with the ball. He's like, I always rush the quarterback. He's like, because I don't know if it's a play fake. I don't know if this or that. But here's the thing. Jason Taylor was like 6'7". So, if they were trying to throw a screen over him or something, he could elevate with those long arms and make it hard to throw over him and around him and stuff with that wingspan. That being said, Thibodeau can be that kind of guy. Thibodeau has a long wingspan. Thibodeau can be the guy like, I'll rush the passer and run into the running back on the way. Just go get the quarterback every down. And Ojulari the same way. I would rather see our linebackers worry about running backs. Our linebackers flow to the outside and fill with safeties in the rush lanes on the outside. Let those two young guys constantly go after the quarterback and rip it all the time, because even if they're not getting to the quarterback before the throw, if they're hitting them right after the throw, punishing the quarterback will be the easiest way to get interceptions and turnovers. So for me, I would rather see Wink let him rip, and I think he will, but he wanted to see kind of what shape Ojulari was in today. He wanted to see how, Thibodeau's progressing. But again, I think it's coming where they're gelling. I mean, we saw five sacks today, and this defense can consistently deliver 5 sacks every week. I believe that. I really do. So it's going to be, how does this team hold up against the run, which is going to be the key, because as we saw, Brian Robinson today, he has a little juice in them legs. He had 96 yards and 21 carries, right? And Gibson had another 39 yards on 9 carries. So, I mean, they did rush for 165 and 36 carries today, and Robinson, I mean, he's a fine young back. I mean, out of Alabama, that kid he's on my fantasy team for a reason. So, I picked him up late in the fantasy draft. Then he got shot in the leg, so I've had to hold him back until lately. But I mean, he's just a great story. I know we're not on Washington radio here, but I'm just saying, if you're a football fan, you got to be a fan of that.
Oh, absolutely. He's an impressive looking kid. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's built the right way inside and out. He handled his adversity with class and style.
Yes, he did.
And he made it back with his toughness and tenacity.
Good for him. Great comeback story. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, but as far as our defense, I think it's going to be how we start shoring up this rush defense, because as we all know, playoff football is running the ball, and giving up 165 yards rushing today and not getting off the field on some key drives was where I think we had the biggest issue.
How much, though, of the run defensive problems is Wink just saying, you know what, I got to give up something, so I'll give up the run to protect my banged up defensive secondary? How much does that factor into the equation, both not just this week, but, I guess overall?
I saw some missed tackles today. I saw some run fits that weren't sewn up, especially from the middle linebacker spots. I saw some good ones, don't get me wrong, but there was a few missed by middle linebackers. They were reading and reacting versus just being instinctive and rolling to the ball. So for me, they have to get more instinctive and just see that ball come in and go. So for me, I know Wink's all about rushing the passer and everything, but when I saw today was that he called some run, he's obvious running situations. And when you're going up against the Commanders and Turner and, Rivera, they're going to run the ball. I mean, that's just how Scott Turner's been raised from Norv, his dad. I mean, Norv all the way back to Emmitt Smith days at, the Dallas Cowboys. And then when we had Norv as our offense coordinator in Miami with Ricky Williams, everything runs through the running backs. So, that's how Scott Turner came up. So when you're playing the Commanders, everything's going to run through those running backs. If their running game struggles, they'll struggle. If the running game is working, they'll be successful. So you have to learn how to literally jack up those running backs and fill those running lanes when playing the Commanders.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned the defensive secondary, and I just want to check something real quick here, because they did make a change. Darnay Holmes wasn't able to go because of the shoulder injury. Terry McLaurin had 8 catches, 105 yards, 1 touchdown, including the one that I think he beat Zion Gilbert on. Dotson had a touchdown reception, 5 for 54. I mean, are they just at a point now with that secondary where it's just a mash unit and, it's a wing and a prayer with them? Or are there things that they could do to help that group?
The rush will help that group. But shutting down, getting the 3rd and longs will help that group. Because when you're in a 3rd and 7 or less, in the field's wide open, you got to protect from the first down, but you also got to protect for the long ball. It's wide open. When you're at a 3rd and 15 or a 3rd and 12, even, you're not worried about those little 5-yard hitches and those little distractional, crossing routes that are shallow, because you're like, yeah, go ahead and catch that. I'll come tackle you, But it's when you're in those 3rd and 7 situations, those 2nd and 5 situations, that's when the playbook's wide open for the quarterback and the whole offense. So you gotta get them in the longer 3rd downs, and you got to win first down. Basically, is what I'm saying. You got to win on first down and make sure they're even or they're negative on first down. You're not giving up any positive yards to the offense. Win first downs with the Commanders, and you'll win a lot of games. But by giving them those 2nd and shorts and 3rd and shorts, that's why that's their bread and butter. That's when they're successful.
Yeah. And, look, bottom line is, I think in the off season, linebacker, addressing that spot is going to be important. Maybe adding some more depth at cornerback is going to be important. I don't know. People ask me every time, a lot, when Xavier McKinney coming back. I'm starting to wonder if he is going to be back this year. I know he said he thinks he's going to be, but I don't know if he's going to be back. The cornerback, Fabian Moreau, I thought had kind of a rough game today. He missed 1 tackle. I think he went low and the guy went high. So they got to definitely look to address that. And they'll get some guys back off IR next year, but, it's not going to do them any good right now, unfortunately. So that is what it is.
But again, remember in preseason, I was preaching them to trade for Roquan Smith, right? Because I was like, I saw the run. They needed the linebacker. You know, that was something. And those are times when you can't miss on opportunities. When you know there's a disgruntled player somewhere that maybe fits your scheme really well and you can make a trade for him, you got to go get him. I mean, you see teams like the Niners do it. You see other teams do it. You know, you saw people like the Rams in the midseason last year go do it, you know. So when you know there's a player that's a little disgruntled, it might cost you some money to go get him, might cost you draft picks, whatever it may cost you. You in the league, because it's so tight, you have to make that decision and go do it these days, because you can't build for the future every year. You have to win certain years. And this was a year where if they would have been able to trade Tony and some draft picks for him, it would have really helped that defense and so up that defense this year. And it would have been really fun to watch him in our defense versus in the Ravens defense.
Is what it is. I mean, like I said, next year they'll get some guys back and then they'll add to it. So, all right, we're going to take our final break. When we come back, kind of look at the big picture on things. So don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back. This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Hey, Giant fans, did you know playing daily fantasy based on player projections has never been easier when you visit prizepicks.com? Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go on to score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada, and they offer projections on every sport. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, and Prize Picks offers safe and fast withdrawals. Download the Prize Picks app today or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. Don't forget that promo code LOCKEDON at sign up at prizepicks.com. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm Paricia Traina, joined by David Turner, former NFL scout, worked with the Giants, knows the game inside and out, also knows personnel and all that good stuff, which is why we love him so much here on the Locked On Giants podcast. We love having him on here, even though he's missed a couple of shows with us, which I've had to carry. And I don't do half as good of a job without you, David. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
I try. Hey, listen, you got a life. I get it. So I did the best I can.
I was Thanksgiving. I was going good in the first half, and then they wrote me into cooking and doing stuff in the second half. And then I was like, I didn't see enough to come on because I didn't see the second half much.
It's all good.
And I wasn't at my house where I can cook and watch TV. Like I have it set up with my kitchen. I see my TV. I was at a friend's house, and their TV's in the other
good.
room.
Don't sweat it. I
was mad. I was angry about it.
You like coming on the show with me. I know.
I do.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. All right. So the Giants didn't lose. They didn't win, but I feel like they kind of lost because this was an opportunity for them to put some space between them and the Commanders and kind of have a firmer hold, if you will, on a playoff berth. They're still in the hunt. But Seattle won their game. They're breathing down the necks of the Giants and the Commanders. When you look at the rest of the Giants' schedule, can they eke out another win or two? Or are they facing an uphill battle here?
Well, they're facing a very tough finishing schedule. I mean, let's look at it game by game if you want, but it's a very tough schedule, you know. But they didn't lose today. I mean, they didn't win when they should have because they had the lead. What was it, 20-13 going into like the last 5 minutes or something of the fourth quarter, I believe. So they should have shut that out. They should have clamped down and said, that's it. Let's go. They got away from the run. They didn't utilize the pass game as efficiently in that time zone as they did the rest of the day, you know? So for me, I'm looking at it. I'm like, man, that's where the coaching staff tripped themselves up there in that time frame. So they didn't win it. Okay, they didn't close the game out. They should have. Now next week they have a really tough task against a very talented, team in the Philadelphia Eagles, who have two incredible receivers, a great running game with Sanders and, the quarterback Hurts. Hurts is playing out of his mind, great MVP style almost this year. So they have to clamp down the run game. And they're, AJ Brown is an incredible receiver. And, Smith today had an incredible day. I think he had, I don't know, AJ caught 2 touchdowns. Smith caught 1, and I think they're both over 70 yards of receiving too. So it's just buckle up, Giants defense. It's coming. As far as the Giants offense, I mean, they don't handle the run very well. The Eagles defense, I mean, they're trying to handle the run, but they don't handle the run well. So this is something you got to lean on them, and you'll probably have to play in the second half to win the game. The first half, it might not look good, but if you stick to the run game and you wear out that defensive line, you can pick up some good yards in the second half. The teams that have done well against the Eagles have worn them down with the run game, use play action pass, and utilize their tight ends. We have everything to beat them. We just need to stick to our guns, stick to our game plan, and do it. Then the next meeting against Washington in 2 weeks, they got a bye week. Then they come back or we go down there and we play them down there, right? Mm-hmm. So again, we got 2 running teams here back to back. We're just gonna have to figure out how to stop that run. And if you don't figure out how to stop the run, I know Wink, he's like, let them get into the red zone, then we'll play our defense, 30 and in. But again, Wink, you got to stop the run game. Otherwise, your offense can't stay committed to the run game because they won't have enough time and possession and touches to do it. But I absolutely think they can get 3 more wins this season. And, on that schedule, it's going to be tough. But can they do it? Absolutely.
Where are they going to come from, the wins? I mean, they have the Eagles next week. So let's go down the list. Do you think they beat the Eagles next week?
Do I think they beat the Eagles next week? No. Mm-hmm. Can they? Yes.
Okay. Then they play the Commanders again, who now will have, by the time they take the field, will have had 3 full weeks to break down every nook and cranny of that Giants team. Can they beat them?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, stop the run. Commanders will struggle.
Okay. Then I believe they play the Vikings. I think the Vikings are up after that.
Yeah, the Vikings gave up 500 yards of offense to freaking Mike White and the Jets today. Did they win? Yeah, they won, but they gave up 500 yards of offense today. So can we win that game? Yes, we can win that game. Again, it's going to be hard, but you can.
The Colts?
Absolutely.
And then the Eagles at Philadelphia.
And again, it's possible. Here's the thing. Commanders and Colts, I think, absolutely are winnable games. Commanders and Colts, and then they can pick up one. Either one with Philly coming into their house next week or Minnesota dropping the 2 to Philly. But again, I think that definitely – I mean, I'm watching the Colts play tonight. They are nothing special. They're not. I mean, I love Jonathan Taylor to death, but, they're nothing special. But, in Minnesota, yeah, they got a special offense, but, here's the thing. Their defense gave up 500 yards to the Jets. And I believe in our offense a lot more than the Jets offense, being honest.
Okay. So you think it's possible that the Giants could pick up at least 3 more wins?
I say 2 are not guaranteed, but if they drop those 2, it's on our coaching and it's on our players. We should win those 2 games. And then they can pick up a third, either one against Philly or Minnesota.
Well, you're more optimistic than I am because I think Philly's going to sweep them. Minnesota, I think they have a shot. Washington kind of scares me because I think Washington, after coming out of that bye, they'll get Chase Young back. Plus, they're playing on their home turf. And let's talk about, one thing that we haven't really discussed, and that is, are the Giants going to be deflated? Because, look, they battled. They tied the game. It's not a win. It's not a loss. But, just hearing from the players in the locker room after the game, they sounded deflated. It might as well have been a loss, with the way some of those guys were acting.
They'll go home and lick their wounds. They'll go home and lick their wounds because they know they should have won that game. But guess who's coming to town? Philadelphia. So Philly week with Giants, that's a whole different ball game. It don't even matter records. Philly and New York, when they line up, I've been in that building. It's a different building. You don't want to lose to Philly. Washington's one thing. Obviously, Dallas is one thing, right? But you do not want to lose to Philly. That is just not okay. Like, you cannot lose to Philly. That's not okay. My favorite team is the Giants and whoever's playing Philly. So that's just the way Giants fans roll. Okay, so you just got to understand that. It's just not okay to lose to Philly. They'll roll in on Monday. I'm sure Dabo and Wink will have their motivational things ready to go. How it's Philly week, baby. Let's get it up. Let's show the leader of this division that they're not as special as they think they are. Let's make sure they understand this is New York they're coming to. You know what I mean? Like, all that stuff will be there all week long, and Wink will ratchet up until that defense is frothing at the mouth. Okay. And
so it'll be like the Super Bowl. It'll be like their Super Bowl.
It's going to be a playoff environment. I guarantee you. When they walk in the building Monday morning, after corrections are done of this game, they're going to start tweaking. They're going to start talking. I don't think you can handle that guy. I think that they're just going to roll in here and roll us over like dogs on our belly. I mean, you're going to hear all that stuff. And you know what the players are going to do? Puff their chests out and like, Coach, how can you say that to me? Because look, we're supposed to beat the Commanders and we were up. And we lost, or we just tied them. It took good overtime. We couldn't even win. How are we going to play with Philly? And watch those players bow up and go, okay, Coach, you don't think we can play? Okay, Coach.
The old motivational technique, right?
You got to motivate players. And again, you're talking about millionaires playing a boys game, right? Like, it's a kid's game. They're playing for millions of dollars. The only thing that you're going to be able to do to motivate them, ain't going to be able to pay them any more money, is to tweak them. Warren Sapp used to say, they don't pay me to play on Sunday. They pay me to practice and lift weights. He's like, if they got to pay you to play on Sunday, you're in the wrong business, son. So, and that's the way it is. I mean, any business, I don't care what business you are in, if you're not motivating your employees in a way and in a manner that's efficient to get them going, then you're not a leader. You're not a person that's going to have a successful business. And in football, it's all about knowing how to motivate these guys. And as soon as you tell them they're not going to have a chance in hell to beat the Eagles, you watch that pride come out. You watch it. Because that's not a team. That's a team that likes to fight. I think they didn't finish today because of some coaching mistakes and because a little bit of injuries, yes. But some coaching mistakes, I think, cost them the win in that game today. If they would have picked up 5 more yards on that last play, or if they would have picked up that touchdown at the end of the first half, game's over. Coaching mistakes. Now, if the coaches make those mistakes against Philly, it's going to be a slaughter. But the players are going to be ranched up and ready to play because Philadelphia, New York week, it's a different level of competition. I guarantee you.
Oh, I know. I've done this for many years, and Eagles week is always, there's always something special about Eagles week. Always something funky happens, and doesn't matter who's coaching or who the players are. It gets heated. Mainly because I think the Eagles have owned the Giants for like the last, I don't know how many years. I mean, the Giants have won one in the last 8-9 years or something like that. It's been a while for sure, but Giants got to get it going. I mean, look, they kind of, even though they didn't win, they're still in third place in the NFC East. They're still holding on to, I think, the 6th seed in the playoffs race. But before this thing slips away, they got to turn it up and get back to their identity. Probably the biggest problem if we're looking at things, from a macro level that this team has experienced.
And I feel that all the makings are there. I mean, just stick to what works. Go back before the bye week. Find that team, put it back on the field.
Just get the players healthy again. That's the tough part. But
this time of year, everybody's hurt. I mean, look at the Niners. They lost their quarterback, a second starting quarterback today. Everybody's hurt. Everybody's going to limp into the playoffs. It's the way it goes. Typically, the healthiest teams are, the ones that finish out the year, right?
Yep.
But everybody is hurt. Everybody's banged up by this time. Everybody's played enough football where, you know what, you stay a little extra in the ice bath. You get a little bit of game ready extra on the legs. You make sure you sleep a little bit more and drink a little bit more Gatorade. It's just the way it goes. It's that time of the season now. So
strap them up and get ready, right?
Rub some dirt on it, sucker. Let's go.
All right. On that note,
sorry, but I'm old school. It's just like if my mama taught me, if your bone ain't hanging out, you're playing. Let's go.
Hey, I mean, that's I can relate to that. I mean, when I used to play
she'll tell
sports,
you that's how she raised me. She's like, you want to play,
was a kid,
your bone's not hanging out, you're playing.
When I was a kid, I played sports, softball, basketball, volleyball. And there were days when I was like, I don't feel like playing. And my father, God rest his soul, he'd be like, your arms working, your legs working? Yeah. Well, you got no reason not to play, do you? So I totally get it. And on that note, we will see what the week brings. And hopefully next weekend, we are talking about a Giants win. I mean, hey, anything can happen. That's why you line up and play the game, right?
That's why you line up and you hit them hard.
Exactly. You smack them into oblivion.
Hit them hard and everything will work out just fine.
Get them into Unaki, right? So, All right. On that note, Giant fans, we are going to call it a show here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Twitter Tuesday is tomorrow, so you know what to do. Info is in the show notes. Get those questions in by 7:00 on Monday, and I will try and get as many into the show as possible. For David Turner, I am Paricia Traina. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day or watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. We will see you tomorrow.